Hello and welcome to this week's Talking City from the offices of the Manchester Evening News. I'm Mike Keegan and I'm here with our City reporter Stuart Brennan to look back at a disappointing exit in the Champions League and a tasty looking clash down at Stamford Bridge to take on Rafa Benitez's Chelsea on Sunday. Stuart, it was the inevitable really, but it happened on Wednesday night.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure it was inevitable because if they'd have won that game, there'd still been a chance, of going through. But I always felt it was going to be difficult right from the very first moment the balls were drawn out of the little footballs or whatever they use at the draw. It was a tough group. I mean, I know there's a lot of United fans crowing about it this morning, but I very much doubt United will have made it through that group. And I suspect that United will be suffering the same fate when they play somebody half decent.
Doesn't take them long, does it? As soon as the final whistle went last night, you go on Twitter and it's just full of United fans. Passports in the drawer.
Yeah, it's just bizarre. I mean, because they're very fortunate in that they go in pot one, so they always avoid Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich. They avoid all the top teams until City can get to that point. But it's difficult. It's a bit of a vicious circle because to get to that point, you've got to start getting through and getting to the later stages. And to get to the later stage, you've got to negotiate a difficult group. I think City were particularly unfortunate in getting Borussia Dortmund, who were in pot four, and to me they're the best team in Europe right now. They've topped that group, which had Real Madrid in it,
and they've done it easily, haven't they?
Yeah. They beat Madrid and then drew with them in the Bernabeu. They look a fantastic team, and to get them as your pot four team is just bad luck. I mean, next season you never know. City could get teams from pot four, pot 2 or 3, depending on what they're in, who are sort of reasonably easy, and then you can finish second to the team that's although City should be looking to try and top the group one year on with another year's experience behind them. But it's all about garnering experience. Nobody wins the Champions League in the second season of being in it. It takes teams a long time to get used to it, especially English teams, because it's that difficult to do tough games down the side.
In some ways, is it a relief for City to be out of it and now they can concentrate on the league?
I don't think that anyone at the club will be seeing it that way, because Champions League is now on the City agenda. They won the league last year and they want to win the Champions League. They want to do well. This year they wanted to do well in it. They wanted to get to the knockout stages. That was the bottom line in terms of the Champions League. They haven't done that. So I don't think they'd ever see it as a relief. And I think there's a genuine feeling that maybe they want to get into the Europa League because you get that little bit of experience. There's a little bit of glory attached to winning the Europa League. I know people sort of give it short shrift, but once you get to the final, people do. It's like a bit like the League Cup, in this country. People don't really take any notice of it, but once you get to a final, it's another trophy. And I think that they'll be looking at the Europa League. Plus, you get coefficient points, which boosts you up the rankings, which put you in a higher pot for the draw for next season. So there's that to be considered as well. But no, I don't think anyone would ever see it as a relief. I mean, it could work in City's favour if they're not in the Europa League. And United and Chelsea continue in the Champions League. You get to January, February, March, they're still doing the same thing. They've still got midweek games. City can just train through the week, play the game at the weekend, and it can work in your favour in that regard. So it won't be a relief, but it could end up as a blessing in terms of City's league ambitions.
Do you think they've gone backwards from last season in the Champions League? Because last season they were very unlucky to get the points that they did and then miss out. Whereas this year they've just,
I want to say they've gone backwards because, last season it was Napoli and Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich were a top team. Napoli were in a great run of form, very good team. This year they've run into possibly the two best teams in the competition so far, Real Madrid and Borussia Dortmund. So the results against Ajax are the disappointing ones for City. You've got to be looking to beat them. Things went badly wrong in Amsterdam, and then some poor defending in the home game, and they were 2-0 down and ended up having to come from behind. So I wouldn't necessarily say they've gone backwards, because it was a tougher group than it was last season. But you can't really see that they've made an awful lot of progress, and that needs to be looked at maybe. I think it needs to be looked at in terms of personnel next summer. I think there are some players there who maybe aren't up to the Champions League standards.
I think because you look at, I think Owen made the point last night in his ridiculous tash that the squad this season is not as strong as it was last season. He said De Jong has gone, and the players that they've brought in, with Sinclair's, aren't up to the standard that they should be looking at.
I think that's a fair point. I mean, the players that have come in, in the summer they were looking at Daniel De Rossi and Javi Martinez and players of that standard who are Champions League players, the kind of players who win the Champions League. They didn't get them. Instead they got Javi Garcia, and they got two young English players in Jack Rodwell and Scott Sinclair and Maicon, who's perhaps past his best. So they didn't bring in players who are going to win the Champions League, and I think that is something that needs to be addressed next summer. And I think that's maybe where Cheeky Begaristain comes into the picture, because he's a player who goes out and buys big players. He's done it at Barcelona, and also we'll try and organise a club so that they start producing their own players. But short term, he will be briefed, right, go out and get us these players, and this is what Mancini wants. This has been the crux of the problem between Mancini and Brian Marwood, in that Mancini feels that Marwood hasn't gone out and delivered the goods, hasn't brought in the players that he wanted them to bring in. I'm not sure that's Brian Marwood's fault particularly, but that's the way it's been seen by Mancini, I think. I think personnel will come into it, and also City need to find ways of different way of playing in Europe. They've shown the naivety, the way Madrid were hitting them on the break last night,
especially early on.
Yeah, it's a different kettle of fish. City are used to playing in the Premier League. They play at home, they play in the other team's half, they keep the ball, the other team just sit back and get squeezed tighter and tighter and tighter, and it just sooner or later City will break through because they've got class players who know how to break through defences. Madrid sat back, defended really well. People talk about them as an attacking force, but I thought defensively they were absolutely brilliant. And then as soon as they get the ball, they're off. You've got Ronaldo running at you, you've got Di Maria running at you.
Di Maria looked like he was quicker than Ronaldo at times.
Well, this is what you get with a team like Madrid. They've got quick players, they've got technically brilliant players. And all of a sudden you've got 3 or 4 of them streaming at you, and your defences, you're on the back foot. And then your midfield players who are pushing up and pressing into their half have got to get back quickly. Otherwise you've got a serious problem, and it happened several times last night before City nipped it in the bud and made a tactical change. It's tough. You've got to learn how to cope with these kind of things if you want to be at the top, and you also need the personnel maybe.
The question was asked after the game of Mancini whether he feared for his job after a second failure in a row in the Champions League. Is that realistic? Is there somebody in Abu Dhabi thinking, well, that's not good enough, or is it just paper talk?
I think it's unbelievable. I can't imagine for 1 minute that anyone in Abu Dhabi would see it that way. You look at the league table, City at top of the league. It's just preposterous. It's the second season in the Champions League. It takes everybody several seasons, and I think they understand that. They're pretty shrewd people. They're not football people necessarily, but they're shrewd enough to grasp the concept that football isn't like another business. You can't progress it year upon year and set a target and hit that target, because there are all kinds of imponderables. Real Madrid being one of them, and Borussia Dortmund being another one. You just cannot treat football in that regard. They've always said that as long as they can see progress being made, well, fair enough. You could say that progress isn't being made in the Champions League, but I think it probably is. I think it probably is. The players will come out of this. If they go into a group like that next season, I think they will fare an awful lot better. I don't think
they've learned the lesson.
I don't think they'd slip up the way they did against Ajax. I think they would. If this was 1 year on, and they had a team like Ajax, I think they would beat them home and away. Simply because they've realised that you can't take anybody lightly in Europe. You can't see them as the whipping boys, and the big games are against Madrid and Borussia Dortmund. You've got to see everybody as a difficult team, and I think they'll realise that. I think people will recognise the fact that there've been certain difficulties in that group. There's a lot of bad luck involved. The luck of the draw, that doesn't happen in any other business. You don't get your company drawn up against ICI, and it just doesn't happen. So next season, hopefully with a bit of a kinder draw, and hopefully having reinforced in the summer, and 1 year down the line, I think there'll be a different tournament entirely.
Speaking of getting rid of managers, Chelsea on Sunday, is that a good appointment for Benitez?
I think it's a really good appointment. I really do. I mean, I know towards the end of his time at Liverpool, people were poking fun at Benitez, but I think tactically he's a very, very sound manager, excellent coach, and I think that is perhaps what Liverpool and that's perhaps what Chelsea need at the moment is somebody. They've got fantastic players, they're just not performing, they're not functioning as a team, and I think Benitez will take over that team and get them working together. You know, he's not a particularly great man manager. You know, and that's perhaps been his downfall. But I don't think you perhaps need that at Chelsea. Yeah. You know, you've got big players, you've got players
big personalities anyway.
Yeah. I think if he gets them organised and gets them playing in the way his teams play, which is very sound defensively, and then build from there. I think, you know, with the players they've got, Mata, Oscar, Hazard, players like that, I think they'll take some beat in Chelsea, and he could well get them, you know, he'll get them functioning in time to present a serious challenge in the title race this season.
Because you look at Liverpool since he's left, turns out he didn't do that bad a job after all. You know, the mess that they made.
You know, he won European Cups at Liverpool. He did a great. You know, you talk to one of the Liverpool fans, they love Rafa Benitez. You know, the manager who overachieved given what he had and the circumstances he was in. And I think some of the criticism that was thrown at him was just ludicrous, and I think he'll prove that at Chelsea.
Do you think that has now elevated Chelsea to a serious threat for United and City?
I think they were anyway. I mean, I can't quite believe that this is like we've gone on before. People are doubting Mancini's position when City are top of the league. It's just nonsense. You've got a manager who gets a sack just months after winning the European Cup.
But did they not win that by default? I mean, he's come in at the quarter-final stage.
Yeah, he has, but he's still. I mean, that's the hardest part to come into. You know, you've still got you're winning quarter-finals, semi-finals against the top teams in Europe. People say you win it by default, but you know, everyone should win it by default in that case. You know, and he didn't. It was Chelsea who did it, and you've got to give him the credit. You know, Di Matteo would take the abuse if things had gone badly wrong at Chelsea last season. So you've got to give him the credit and the fact that, you know, he hauled a team that weren't anywhere near the best team in England. He hauled them to a European Cup final and won it against all the odds. You know, the manager has to be given the credit. So yeah, you know, the whole managerial sack race is just incredible sometimes. You know, I can't believe that clubs don't see the merit in people and stick with it. You know, stick with the judgment.
With Benitez, will they hit the ground running Chelsea, or is it a good time for City to be playing them because he's not had that long with them?
It's always a difficult one. I think it might be a good time for City to play them with a manager. Like, if you get a manager who's a big personality, if you got Mourinho stepping into that job, I think it might be the worst time.
Instantly.
Yeah, instantly. He walks into a dressing room and the players are up, you know, and they're bristling and they want to get out there and show them what they can do, and he'd have them pumped up and straight at it. A player like, you know, a manager like Benitez, he'll be on that training ground this morning, and it'll be like, so what? You know, he'll be out with his clipboard and he'll be telling them to do this.
Evaluating.
Yeah, and they won't suddenly be pumped up and ready to go out. And but having said that, you know, this is Chelsea we're talking about. You know, they're a top team. They've got excellent players. They'll be pumped up for this game anyway. Regardless, they don't care who the manager is. They'll want to beat City. But I don't think they'll get that. You'll get that managerial factor of, you know, somebody coming in and getting them at it and sending them out, ripping up trees, kind of
thing. A win for City.
I think they'll get with a draw, and I could see that being the outcome.
Thanks, Stuart, and thanks for watching. Stuart will be at Stamford Bridge on Sunday, and you can follow his updates and all the stats at our match centre. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.